Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Raleigh Municipal Lighting meeting for March 13th, 2019. And first on the agenda is citizens' query. So between now and 7:10, anybody has any questions, they can ask it of the commissioners. Any questions from the audience? Okay, moving on, we'll move on to agenda number 2, review and accept previous minutes. Matt?
Would you like me to just read?
No, we just, has everybody read the minutes?
Yep, they were sent out earlier this week.
Okay.
So I
All right.
reviewed the minutes.
Just wanted to make sure. Okay, anything should be reviewed on the minutes?
I was good with the minutes as they are.
I didn't see any changes needed.
No. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept the minutes from the previous meeting.
I have a motion to accept the minutes. Do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number 3 on the agenda is the Raleigh Solar LLC update. Matt?
They had a little situation down there the other day.
Hi,
Down at Raleigh, how are you?
good, how are you?
Good.
Tony Berkowitz.
Yes, I remember. So line work has been done and we're just waiting for a connection, more or less. There's some work still to be done. I know they excavated and changed the pipe per our standard and request, and we thank you for that. And so we're making progress as we should.
Exactly.
Bonnie, I know who you are, okay, but for the audience,
Bonnie Berkowitz, Raleigh Solar.
Solar, what,
LLC,
in your address?
623 Weathersfield.
Thank you, Bonnie. Okay. So anything else on the update?
No.
Nothing? Okay.
Any estimated commissioning dates for the system?
Hopefully as soon as possible. We anticipate working with Matt and RMLP to just coordinate, frankly. Yep.
That's
We are over ready.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Has the recloser and everything else been tested? I
That
know.
would be the next step once the wire and the more or less the connection order comes in. Is just we schedule it all at once.
Okay.
So it's a priority for RMLP. We know the
Thank you.
you know,
Thank
time
you.
sensitive and.
So you're gonna have, you having PLM or somebody come in and
Yes, they
perform the
will come
tests
in
on
and
the
perform the tests.
recloser,
Yep,
so on and so
cable
forth?
reclosing.
Just for the audience at home, what is that exactly?
It's just to making sure that everything is built and constructed to proper standards, test reports on the high voltage cable, all the line, everything's been built. All the heavy lifting's been done out on Weathersfield. That'll be the final piece
Okay.
to energize and get it up and running.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Matt. Moving on to agenda number 4, pilot payment article for town meeting.
So we submitted that,
You should have it to sign tonight.
I'm not so sure I brought that, honestly. That was the in lieu of payments for the taxes, the 29,000 that we spoke with the town accountant with.
Exactly, yep.
Yes, I do not have that with me, honestly.
If I remember correctly, that's a little bit less than it was last year, correct? And that is mainly because the LEDs that we've installed around town.
Correct, yeah.
So instead of being, I think, I'm going from memory, it was 29,000, and I believe a year ago it was like 34?
I believe last
Yes.
year's was
34.
Yeah, it was a little bit lower,
Yeah.
definitely.
No, and mainly because, again, because of the LEDs that we placed in town, and the electric usage has been that much less.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yes, I don't have that form, but I apologize for that.
Okay. Madam Treasurer, do you remember? Do you have that number? Do you have? No, you don't.
Not my purview.
I know. I was just wondering. We should really vote.
Yeah. I don't have it either.
Did you send that out on an email?
I did not. The only one I talked to was Debbie Egan. I emailed Debbie. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I have my phone in the truck with, and I can access that email towards the end if you want me to do that.
Yeah, could you?
That's no issue
And
at
then that
all.
way we can vote on it? Okay,
Absolutely.
so let's just table that to the end of of the meeting, okay? In the meantime, could you get that email so we could vote on the exact? Okay, all right.
Is there a deadline for that particular? Otherwise, we just need to get it.
I'm thinking there may be, and I just want to be ahead of the curve. This, this is the busy time with the budgets and everything else.
No, absolutely.
So,
I can look it up and grab that,
yeah.
in just a few
Okay.
minutes.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda number 6, letter from Inspector General's office.
We missed 5.
I'm sorry. Personnel policy changes,
Correct.
and we talked about that last month. See, this is what my little check mark too soon. All right.
So the proposed changes, everybody got a look at these? You guys voted to, at the
We
end of the
table
last
them?
meeting to table this and have some time to think about it. Has everybody taken a look at them? Any questions or concerns? Or-
Just to take a look at them again. Okay. And just to, these are the proposed policy changes to be added to existing policies. A half-day before Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Day, Independence Day, and on-call employees and all other employees for Raleigh Municipal Light will come back on their time at no cost to the Raleigh Municipal Plant if needed during working hours. Okay. For clothing allowance, to increase clothing allowance from $750 to $1,000. Longevity, Raleigh Municipal Light provides a longevity bonus to full-time employees with 5 or more years of service. Will be paid $1,500 on their anniversary date. Mutual aid, when an employee receives approval from general manager to assist another city or town that has been requested for mutual aid, the employee shall be paid at a rate of time and a half, portal to portal. Sundays and holidays will be paid at the rate of double time. Office requests new policy clothing allowance for office staff. All office staff will receive $250 clothing allowance to be used on approved clothing. Office requests new policy of 1 hour overtime. All office employees will receive a minimum of 1 hour overtime for all overtime worked. Any discussion from the board about this?
Yeah, I think for some of the clothing allowances,
Yeah,
as they're written, I think they maybe need a little bit more structure to identify, like, how often, if that's yearly, as it falls into the policy, where the clothing will be purchased from, if it's from a particular catalog, if it has to have approved logos on it, so on and so forth.
Okay.
And to kind of look and see, the trend of clothing purchases over the years.
What the
Maybe.
definition of approved?
Yeah.
Kind of looking for a little bit more detail on what would be considered approved, not approved.
Right. I mean,
Okay.
there's allowance from $750 to $1,000 for the FR clothing. I know FR clothing is expensive. What has the trend been? Is it, is $1,000 acceptable and generous, or is it necessary for where we are in the markets?
Yeah, I right now I could only speak to what Reading offered, and I think it was $14.50 for new employees to get up and running.
And that's for new employees.
And then annually.
Annually for
yeah.
the same.
Yes, it is really expensive. It's like a pair of jeans is like $100.
Yeah.
If you get a nice jacket, you're looking at like over $300.
Sure.
So the
is,
stuff.
are those jackets in the clothing special cloth in clothing because of electrical purposes?
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. Anything they wear around here is going to be a category 2.
Okay.
You're actually supposed to layer it, and it's just
And the reason
can't-
for it?
basically OSHA rules.
OSHA
Is
rules.
ultimately what it comes down to now.
Okay.
Is, anything you're wearing can't make the fire worse, or
Right.
the burn worse.
And the FR meaning it's flame retardant.
Yes.
Okay. I have a concern about the office staff clothing allowance, and can you elaborate on that?
Exactly what it is they're looking for, or just
Yeah, Can you elaborate on it? And have we had this before, office staff clothing allowance?
I don't believe, I would have to defer to Eric on this one.
We
I don't
never
believe
have.
There's never been an allowance.
But it'd be nice to go to a meeting and be identified with something, a shirt or something to wear with the logo on it.
Okay, that's what we're looking at. And what kind of clothing we're looking
Well,
for?
it'd be polo shirt or any nice
Okay,
attire to go out to a meeting to.
okay. Are we talking just polo shirts? Are we talking anything else, or what are we?
Yeah, I mean, they, you know, so the guys have like, they call them like the long sleeve Henleys, and it's got the Town of Raleigh logo on it.
Mhm.
Eric will attend meetings.
Like in Groveland,
Sandra will.
Groveland had, their office staff had some nice summer jackets done up.
Okay,
That's the idea, not anything else besides that.
okay, just want to explain.
Yeah, just
Any-
representation.
Any conversation from the board on this?
I'm just kind of concerned about, there's no timelines given to any of this here, if it's yearly, if it's one-time payments, if it's anything like that. And as we're going to see later on tonight, we need to be very clear when we make policies here.
Yes?
So, that's kind of concerning to me. The paid holidays, yes, I do have an issue with most of them. I could agree with possibly the half day before Thanksgiving. And again, I understand the employees are willing to come back at no overtime during those work hours to work, and that's, fantastic. That one I'm willing to give. The rest of them, for me, is really a non-issue. I just can't sign on to that one. The clothing allowance, again, I work with FR Clothing all the time. I did a workup on myself. So my understanding is when we have a new hire here come in, they get a full complement of FR Clothing. So you would get, say, 5 pairs of pants, 5 shirts, a jacket, rain gear, so on and so forth. And then, after that, everything is basically maintenance, what's needed, to repair. So if you get pants that are soiled with hydraulic fluid, so on and so forth, or you wear holes in it. I know when I was down in the Virgin Islands, I went through 4 pairs of pants in the course of 3 weeks. Just because of the nature of the work. So yes, the nature of the work can be difficult, but when I priced myself out with, 1 pair of boots, 5 FR t-shirts, 4 pairs of pants, and then 3 button-up shirts, I was at $810. And that wasn't going high. I wasn't taking the bottom of the barrel prices either. Prices, like my shirts, I priced out at $75 each. I believe shirt prices went anywhere from $40 up to some are at $120 for a high-vis FR HRC2 shirt. So, again, maintenance at $810 per year for me, and that's, again, what I priced out really quickly. That doesn't bother me, but it doesn't specify that this is a yearly thing on here. That bothers me. I need to know these numbers. We need to have it specified what exactly we're going for, when we ask for these things. Longevity, I'm just going to keep rolling right
Sure,
now if you
keep
don't
going.
mind, because I have notes here and
Yep.
I'm talking, so I might as well. Longevity right now, I can't go to $1,500 on that. I'm just not
Okay.
willing at the time. Mutual aid, we did have a discussion about that at the last meeting. Double time on Sundays and holidays if they're gone. That's pretty much standard around here. And it's a cost that's not borne by our MLP. So if they go down on mutual aid to Florida or wherever they may go, Virginia, who knows, a neighboring utility even. If it's a Sunday or a holiday, the neighboring utility bears that cost and we get reimbursed for that. So it's really to me, that's not an issue. It's something that was discussed and then taken out, and for whatever reason it was taken away. I don't understand it in reviewing the meetings from January and February. It seemed like it was there and then it got moved away and now they're asking for it back, and I don't understand why it wasn't left in there in the first place.
Well, I think, go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, have you costed out these municipal aid? Because until you get reimbursed, it's a liability of
So the town.
RMLP.
True.
And if you're getting paid from portal to portal at time and a half, if someone goes to Florida for a week, I mean, you're going to have a huge liability, especially if you have more than one person. until you get reimbursed. And have you ever not got reimbursed?
No.
No. There's a mutual aid contract that's signed before our guys leave
Yeah.
here. So you being paid is a given.
But are there ever any lags?
I think the longest lag that I had was probably about 4 weeks last year. And that was collecting it. And a lot of that has to do with the FEMA paperwork that's required. So
Right,
you
that's
have
why
the
I'm
storm,
asking.
you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you have the benefits calculation sheets that come out, so on
Right.
and so forth. So you're preparing those, although now we pretty much have them all standard and ready to go. I know I
Right.
have a package that, should you have to go out on mutual aid, okay, I understand. I need to have payroll logs and vehicle equipment costs, so it makes it easier. But yeah, there is a lag. It's not terribly long at this time, but it really depends on the utility requesting the assistance and what kind of resources they have in their office to process this kind of stuff.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking of a place that's been wiped out, and, if you have a 6-month lag in getting paid,
Right.
which, wouldn't surprise me with FEMA.
Exactly. No, I hear you. And, these bigger storms have been a learning experience for all of us around here. We've
They
been lucky.
continue to get better and better.
Yeah,
Response.
Organized payment, reimbursement, all that stuff. But if you look at the big picture, right, it's something that all the municipals belong to. It's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. It's
Right.
people are in need, and you're going to help. You wouldn't want to set that trend as a municipal to be held up on something because of, you are going to get reimbursed. It's just a matter of when. It's a valid concern, but I think if you look at the bigger picture, it's the fact that, this place has got a good reputation of going and assisting. That's going to pay dividends in the long run. If we ever get, smacked really hard here, there's going to be a line of people ready to come down and help us, which is,
Mhm.
you can't put a price on that, I
Right.
don't think.
Right. I'm just wondering from a cash flow. I'm a business
No,
person.
valid, yep, no, valid concern and question. I just think the pros outweigh the cons tenfold on that as far as mutual aid.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a good system, good thing.
Mhm.
You could go on and on the benefits of it. It's
Anything
really a
else,
great
Kevin?
thing they've established.
I'm sorry. Anything else, Kevin?
office staff clothing, again, I have the question, it says $250 clothing allowance. Is that a year or is it not? Because, in looking at what office clothing does cost, I don't see, a number of polos or even a fleece jacket wearing out over the course of a year. It's not like it's really out in the field. Do I think Raleigh Light employees should represent if you go to a meeting or, whenever they feel at work? Yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing to have pride in your job and to be able to wear that logo, yes. Do I think 250 is a little bit for interior staff?
Is this to be
Maybe.
granted to the employee, $250, the way this is written?
The way it's written, yes, it's
Well, what it would be is we would
reimbursed for the clothing.
submit,
So you would submit, not get the $250 in a paycheck.
yes.
So,
Similar to the boots that the guys get, yes.
yeah, okay. So,
The boots actually, they get a check. They get a
I
stipend. They-
know-
That actually goes into their paycheck.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
Refund for boots.
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Specific.
mixing up jobs.
so
I
they
apologize.
would submit for a requested article of clothing. Okay, and up to $250.
Correct.
But it wouldn't be only in the paycheck after the item has been purchased.
Well, what we would do is say,
Purchase it
go out
and
to
then-
Sarah
and then-
Graphics, order a shirt, and then when the bill comes in from Sarah Graphics,
And pay.
present it to the light department.
Is that the way it's understood?
Is it to be logoed?
That's where our
That's the,
logo embroider
that's,
is.
yeah,
Should be-
we would
that
need
should
some
be required.
clarification on that.
Yeah, I would
Yes,
think
that
it would have to be
the intent.
required to, in order to, for this to,
And that will be taxable to the employees.
yes. Okay. Do you have any
Just
questions?
to further on the clothing, yeah, I agree with Kevin, it needs to have a definition to the timing, like I said, too, and, 250 can be quite a bit for purchases of general clothing. If there was like an initial hiring, here's, here, you can get a jacket, you can get 2 shirts,
Mhm.
something like that, up to like 150, and then you know, every year, maybe like $75 or something like that, where you could buy a couple shirts, but, you know, office shirts don't wear out all that, you know, all that quickly.
There's nothing, we've had nothing on the books right now stating about a clothing allowance for the office staff.
Correct.
Okay, I don't know, $250 seems a lot right now, I'm just thinking.
I personally, I want to hold off on that one for right now, just because it's not defined.
Okay,
That's my
All right.
feeling on it right now.
Oh, do you feel the same way? Right.
I agree with that, yeah.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, if we were, what would be a good price for, how would you feel? If 250 is too much, which I understand, what would be a good cap limit? And what we can do is we can rewrite that policy for the next meeting.
Okay. Any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I look at polo shirts and stuff like that, you know, $25 to $30. You know, I think that's a reasonable price per polo. I don't know what embroidery costs for something like that. Sure.
Could
Bonnie
we,
Berkowitz, 623. I just had a thought sitting here. Perhaps the current employees, I don't know if we're planning to hire any more office employees, but perhaps, as Matt said, maybe we could get a couple of polos and a jacket, almost as if they're new hires, and then re-evaluate in a year or a period of time and see how that has progressed, or if there's a need to go back at it.
well, I
prior.
think we need to look at this again and really come back and think about, you know,
Defining.
how we should do, how this should be done. Should this be, I'm just thinking about when I was working, what we did was we purchased a number of jackets with logos, okay, and there was a set amount, and they took everybody's sizes, and then they bought them, and that was it. The employee was kind of out of it, and it wasn't a clothing allowance, okay.
Let me ask, and, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, go ahead, Bob.
Do any of the other town departments or town services have clothing allowances?
Not for office employees.
Okay.
Okay. On the paid holidays, okay, the half a day before Thanksgiving, and also half a day for Christmas, which they already have half a day before for Christmas, so do they?
We do not.
I don't believe they do that.
We have the day after.
You have Christmas, your holidays are defined as,
We have Christmas Day off, and then we have the day after Thanksgiving off.
the day after Thanksgiving,
Correct.
okay, which would be the Friday,
Yes.
Yes.
okay. Okay, and the paid holidays right now are,
Total holidays is it 12, so
It's 12 plus the day after Thanksgiving.
what's the day
that's
after
the actual,
Thanksgiving?
that's the day after.
Yeah.
And right now, and then what you're requesting here is half a day before Thanksgiving, half a day before Christmas, half a day before New Year's and Independence Day.
Correct.
Okay. I don't know any place in any industry that, you know, especially a service industry, it's always to the needs of the service, you know, and when it comes down to, you know, granting, especially, and the only way I knew was the half a day before Christmas, and that came usually granted from, you know, upper staff,
Yes.
okay? And it was the requirement of the service, so, at that particular time, so. I have a little problem with it. I don't know how everybody else feels about it.
I've not had experience with half days on holidays before in things I've seen before. It would be, say, unusual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the policy for the rest of the town, would you be interested in that?
Sure.
Basically, people can take that time off, but they have to use paid time. For example, if I choose to close the treasurer's office at noon, I can do that as a department head, but anyone who's not there and chooses not to work has to take either personal time or vacation time.
Okay. Right now, I feel this is a little unusual, half a day. So how does the board feel about the first one? Should we come back and look at this, or should we just,
No, I
Yes or
don't
no?
think we want to drag anything out if we can avoid dragging it out. I mean,
okay,
right now, the only thing that I am willing to say that I would agree to in this proposed policy change would be the addition of the mutual aid Sundays and holidays
okay.
change.
So,
Other than that, at this time, I'm not willing to accept anything else.
okay, so just the mutual aid you're willing to accept?
Me, yes.
Brian?
I think given the list, and if you were to prioritize, what you're getting the best benefit out of, it would definitely be the mutual aid. I think just to question on the FR clothing as well, I think if there's, I don't have any policy in front of me, but I think if there's damage in the line of work to the clothing you're wearing, I think that's replaced by the department. So, how often that's necessary to be purchased, if it just wears out, is that a yearly thing?
Yeah, everything's dated in the clothes too, so you can tell how old it is, so if anybody tries to, pull the wool over your eyes.
What
you
is the
know.
OSHA requirement, rules right now for fire retardant clothing for electrical work?
You have to be layered up in the outermost, well, the outermost layer has to be braided for what you're working on. I mean, everybody did those arc flash analysis studies a few years back. A lot of them have since been changed. The FR clothing, in general, it's kind of unique how it evolved. It first started pretty commonly in a lot of towns, and it was used at the negotiating table.
Okay.
And it really shouldn't have been. It's required PPE, and now starting this year, it's finally been clarified that yes, we do fall under OSHA. It's always been a gray area. People have said, well, maybe yes, maybe no. It's here. It's required PPE. It's no longer. We can certainly discuss and talk about the dollar amount, but bottom line is we are required as employers to give it to our personnel.
Is this the same as with the fire department, their uniforms are required, they're fire retardant also, and they have this special, I'm talking about their firefighting equipment,
In the bunker,
Yes.
yeah.
their bulk gear. So they're coming under OSHA requirements also. Okay. Does this come under OSHA? This also, as I understand, it comes under OSHA requirements.
Yes.
Okay. So when a new employee comes in, they are issued gear.
The full complement of gear
Okay.
that matches the arc flash value that they can be anticipated to see out in the field.
So,
So depending on the caloric exposure out there, they have different classes, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. The most common that we work in is 2.
which
so
is
that
the
the
voltage
majority-
of, we're
It
talking,
has to do with the
energy.
incident energy and how much heat is produced by the arc flash
The arc-
that's out there.
Yeah, so believe it or not, it's worse on the secondary side of the larger KVA pad mount transformers, is really when they're
so
most at risk for.
13,800 volts, correct? And so you're coming into a 40-inch radius of that, that's when you come into the flash.
Yep, but the
area.
the highest incident energy is gonna be at that secondary voltage
Correct.
side, when you're within 10, 12 inches of it at 277, 480.
But you come in,
Yeah.
you come into it at 40 inches from the primary. That's how I was taught.
Yeah, I believe you're talking about minimum approach
Yeah,
distance.
minimum approach.
Which, I get where you're going, it's
Yeah.
a little bit different, but it is the secondary side that would have us in Raleigh exceeding the Class 2 category. Reading ended up getting the Category 4 suits, but don't forget, you can also de-energize it.
Right, yeah, but there's also,
If you
when
have
you know, but that doesn't, you don't have that ability sometime in storm conditions.
Not always,
And in
that's for
storm
sure.
conditions, the humidity is different, and the arcing is different at
Yep.
that particular time. So I just want everybody to understand
Sure, sure.
what we're dealing with.
Yeah, it's ocean-ended.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
on that note, I don't want to belabor this topic, but I think there's some further discussion that's warranted based on the fact that, you like you just said, Bob, you've got the fire department that has standard issue equipment that's required to do their job.
Right.
Right. You've got police task force that have uniforms that are required to do their job. If we're down the road here where the FR clothing is mandated, required to do your job, maybe we need to revisit this as a department issued piece of equipment for safety and everybody to use, and then replace as needed as they wear. I don't know if every fighter gets 2 jackets, or they just go into the same one every time if it's
As I understand it, they get their initial issue, okay, and then the chief will evaluate the clothing, okay, and at this particular time, and a new issue be brought forward.
okay. But I would
As
They also have a clothing allowance for
Also.
fire department.
okay.
for
But it's
general
for-
type
It's
of
for
clothing.
replacement.
Yeah.
Basically, you get, what you need when you start, and then there's an allowance for replacement. I mean, that's how it is with most of the departments.
Yeah, initial startup is higher naturally because you gotta get outfitted.
Right,
And then it's a
right.
lower dollar amount, and the
Right.
thought process is that you can keep up with the ripped pants, the ripped shirt,
Right,
the
but isn't that
soiled
what you're
stuff.
talking about, is the replacement, the annual replacement? Is that what you're discussing as a policy?
I think they're talking about, they get a clothing allowance to buy additional things to replace anything in their, I believe if I'm getting this right, anything that they have been issued that wears out.
Right.
That's not extraneously damaged. So if they tear it out in the field
Yeah.
on something, I think they get that replaced by the department. I think this is just kind of like natural wear and tear. They
Exactly.
can use that
Exactly.
to replace the stuff in it. If they have years where they don't wear out, say, so many pants, they end up with 3 pairs of pants that they can go on with that aren't too big. You could buy yourself a heavier weight winter parka or a fleece or something like that that falls within the, acceptable arc hazard
Exactly,
range.
exactly. But it's a replacement, it's not, it's an annual
Yeah,
allowance to replace what you've already got.
yeah.
I think we just need to make sure it's defined that way.
Yeah, I think,
As the policy exists now too, that it's defined
Okay.
that way.
come back and take a look at this,
Yeah, agreed.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
But are we gonna vote on, is there anything in here we're gonna vote to accept, yes or no?
Well, I think was brought up by yourself, Kevin, mutual aid, and also Brian, correct?
Yeah, out of all these, I think the mutual aid is,
Okay.
it's
So,
like
so
an
what we're
insurance.
looking at right now is just to accept the mutual aid, or the proposed policy changes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can I have a motion? Please define it.
At this time, I make a motion to include in the policy handbook, underneath mutual aid, the inclusion of the line Sundays and holidays will be paid at the rate of double time.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I second that, the
That was-
inclusion of the mutual aid line item.
Okay. I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask, is there anything on the list that we shouldn't waste our time researching or rewriting on there that you guys feel that wouldn't go?
I would just make the holidays go away, quite frankly.
Okay, but everything else is a possibility?
I think we can have a discussion about getting some pieces of clothing for the office staff, yes.
Okay.
A full complement, 5-day a week, I don't think so. But again, to, represent it, say, a meeting or something like that,
Okay.
I don't particularly have a problem with it. I don't want to speak for the other guys.
Bernie, do you have a question?
Yes, one item was
Could you just
mentioned-
identify yourself, Bernie?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Bernie Cullen, 283 Weathersfield Street.
Thank you.
The 1 hour minimum overtime requirement,
That should have been the last one.
Yes,
Correct.
that would, that's not been voted on.
No, I know, I was gonna make a comment on it.
Oh, okay.
I just think it's, again, it's a problematic precedent for other departments that I'm aware of, and it was, yeah, I just think it's problematic.
I think that's why the commission didn't look at it, Bernie. I think we find it problematic too. Okay. All right, okay, now I can go to number 6, right? A letter from the Inspector General's office. Okay. And has everybody read this?
Oh, too much lately.
Yes, sir.
This was very interesting. And what the general, just to give you a gist of what it came down from the executive summary, the office of the, I'll just read the second paragraph here. The Office of the Inspector General Office reviewed sick leave payouts at municipal light plants across Massachusetts. The review came after the office learned that the general manager of the South Hadley Electric Light Department, Shield, should receive more than $500,000 for sick and vacation leave that he allegedly accrued while at Sheld. The Sheld payout highlighted the need to review and leave time accruable payouts at all municipal light departments, plants. The office examined employee policies and practices of 40 of the 42 active light plants in the Commonwealth to understand how to manage employee benefits. After initial review, the office focused on sick time because it accounted for nearly 80% of the payouts to light plant employees during a 6-year period from July 2010 to September 2016. The office found that many light plants have a leave time and payout policy that cost the taxpayers millions of dollars. The office also found that leave policies are inconsistent across light plants. Policies are also inconsistent with those applicable to state and municipal employees. And then they go on, and it's quite weighty, I'll put it that way. It's quite enlightening, quite alarming, and some of the, I would say the payments were excessive. Okay, and do you have any comments from my commission?
No, again, there was some pretty astounding numbers that you see in there from other municipal light plants, across Massachusetts.
Good news is that Rowley's policy did not seem astronomical, crazy, excessive
Yes.
compared to a lot of these others. So I think we're in a much better spotlight than a lot of other towns, for sure. The biggest thing I saw was that they don't pay out, or we do not pay out, at least at the light department, unless it's upon retirement. And that was one of the recommendations at the end of that memo. So that's check that as a positive for the town of Rowley. It's a good thing, I feel. Passing it in a better light, for sure.
And what I read was just that was the executive summary. And then the conclusions, recommendations, sick leave is an important employee benefit. It should be available to all for employees to use when they or their family members need medical care. Nevertheless, the municipal light plants offer costly sick, and they're talking about not in generalities here. They're talking specific light plants that came to notice. Okay, sick leave benefits that exceed state employee benefits and are at odds with the intent of the sick leave. These practices also expose light plants to significant financial liabilities for future payouts. The ratepayers will have to fund these payouts, and in some instances, the light plants will have no recourse to raise their rates for sick leave balances. So, again, this is an eye-opener. Okay. Any other comments from the commissioners?
No, I really don't. I mean, I think you can see that, if my understanding is correct, some of the MLPs have corrected some of the policies on the payouts in there. I believe Reading may have been singled out in there, for the amount of payouts that they had, and since, I believe the policy has changed, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm obviously very familiar with Reading's policy, and currently there's 3 policies there. So the, so to speak, excessive one, the good one, if you work there, ended for anybody hired after 2004. So anybody hired after 2004, depending on which group you were in, if you were in the professionals group or the line meter station group, the professionals group was a 60-day buyout, and the line meter station was a 30-day, and then after 2007, it's across the board. It's 30 days. I think it's 7. Don't quote me on the date, but
Okay.
but there's 3 different policies. They do offer a buyout though upon separation, as long as you're not terminated and you followed the rules along with the buyout. There is a set of rules for targeted for sick days as a target. Anything after that, you need to have a doctor's note saying that you were there and you were in fact ill or received treatment or medication. And then only if you followed those rules were you allowed to buy back the remaining days that you accrued that year. So there was a lot to it when it was established.
I think the other takeaway I got from it is that MLPs are kind of all over the place when it comes to the different buyback policy throughout the Commonwealth.
Sure, I want to say Ipswich, when I left there, was 40% maybe, and they had a cap on the days. And I think theirs was only upon retirement as well. So yeah, I believe your statement to be true, Kevin, that different municipals are kind of all over the place.
Madam Treasurer?
Mr. Chairman, as we looked at yesterday, the changes that were made to the buyback policy a year ago greatly increase the liability. And they were actually, they removed some of the restrictions. So the buyback policy that was changed a year ago is much more generous than the previous one. And I have heard no discussion of the potential liability from that. I believe there's a target date of, what was the target date that we read? What is the maximum number of days in your policy?
The Reading or the
In Raleigh?
in Rowley?
It's 1,200 hours.
Yeah, it ends up 1,200.
That took effect February 2018. There was that change, as I went back and read the notes at that particular meeting.
Eliminated the 4 days
Yes.
target.
Yes. So I think that needs to be looked at again and addressed.
The 4-day target.
The whole policy, I think the whole policy has to be reevaluated, okay? And we're gonna get into that a little bit later in the last item that we have on the agenda here.
And just the town has no sick time buyback policy.
Yes. Yeah. And then also,
Do they have a 4-day target? Is there a target number that the town employees try to shoot for?
There's a maximum, but there is no buyback. So when you leave, you get nothing.
Yep, nope, I understand that. I'm asking if there is a, like your employees that work for you, is there a target number of
No.
days that they try not to exceed?
No.
So they earn their day and a quarter a month,
Day and a half a month.
day and a half a
Mhm.
month, sorry. Okay. And they, no buyback, but if they use 9 days a year, they're not hauled in and disciplined or anything like that for going over 4 days, or there's no rules like that.
Because if you're sick,
Can
you're
use up
sick.
to your entire
I mean,
bank,
the
correct?
reason you have sick time
Yep.
is if something happens, or, you have children that you care for that are sick.
Understood totally.
Right,
Understood.
right.
We,
I mean, it's there to use when you need it.
when you need it. So we, some of the newer employees, when we were at Reading, they came up with the people that didn't get the, all expenses paid, trip out the door there, you know, some of the people made the argument come contract time, like, hey, you know, we have families, we got kids, parents to take care of. So what they did is they created up to 4 days, I think it was, you could also use a sick day to care for a family, for immediate family. And it was very clearly specified in the policy, immediate family. If your son came down with strep and your wife was going to work that day and couldn't miss it, you know, you could get a note
Take a sick day.
and take a sick day to care for your child or your father or your mother or something like that.
Well, the Town of Raleigh personnel plan is your children or any relative that lives with you.
Okay,
So if your parents live with you and you had to take care of them,
Yep.
then you can use sick time for that. If they don't, then, you know, you have vacation and personal time.
sure. Yeah, no, I'm just,
Yeah.
we said they
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to revisit it,
Yeah.
I'm just throwing
Yeah.
some different,
Out in the private,
options out.
out in the private sector, you would receive your vacation time, you would receive 5 personal days, okay? And out of those 5 personal days, 4 would be paid and 1 would be unpaid. Okay, that's most policies in the private sector, okay? And that's an incentive. You had your, I'm just gonna take a 4 weeks vacations, you know. We're talking about an employee who's been 20 years
Yep.
in the private sector. And then would have those 4 personal days paid would be sick days. You know, that's what they were looked at as, okay, contractually, that they would be given. And then if you really wanted to have that last day, okay, unpaid, which very rarely did I ever see anybody
Right.
take, okay, the unpaid day, but it was there in case you were really, really sick, okay? And of course, in the private sector, it's different, we're talking 2 different entities here. Anyways, any other,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think, looking at the Inspector General's report, I think it's valuable to read within the conclusions and recommendations.
okay,
The section that they talk about, you know, as part of their fiduciary duty to ratepayers, light boards should, and they list 5 items here. I think I can
you
read
go
them.
right, you go right ahead and read them.
1, follow the model for state employees and cap at 20% the amount of sick leave that an employee can receive compensation for at retirement. Second bullet point, prohibit any sick leave payouts to employees who separate from service with or without cause other than at retirement. Bullet 3, eliminate annual sick leave buybacks. Item 4, implement and enforce robust timekeeping practices to ensure that all employees accurately account for their use of sick time. And the last bullet, be transparent about the plant's financial liability for unused sick leave. For instance, publicly report both current payouts and future liabilities in open board meetings to municipal officials and in annual reports. I went through and highlighted the 3 that we could potentially implement or would need to implement if we were to take the recommendations from this Inspector General report. There's only 2 that we don't do, which is prohibit any sick leave payouts to employees who separate from service with or without cause other than at retirement, and eliminate annual sick leave buybacks. So we do not do currently annual ones. The other 3 are open for discussion, I think. So.
Again, so being optimistic, that's, could be a lot worse, that's, we're on a good start, good track.
Yeah.
For sure.
So
could
I
be
think we-
fine-tuned, you know, absolutely, but.
I think we need to go
Better
back.
off than a lot of other people out there, which
Right.
is,
And I mean, people
Which is good.
use sick time for when they're sick. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why it's there.
that's right.
It's not, you know, an extra vacation time or personal time.
Correct.
Or addition to your pension. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah, it's for sick time. All right. All right, any other discussion on this?
On that, no.
Okay, we come back, we'll revisit this at another board meeting, and is that the idea of the commissioners?
I think it needs to be in
Do you want to-
purview of this report is essential that we get out ahead of it.
Okay. implement it tonight or look at it for the next meeting?
I think.
I think it needs
You gotta take a
review.
good look at some, my suggestion is you gotta take a good look at something like this, and
Okay,
you're not gonna resolve this tonight.
No, I mean, I think
As far as
there's,
a policy change on our,
okay.
You want to have a long, deep look at any policy like this you change so we don't end up in a predicament.
it warrants review
You
because
know what I
you've got to
mean? I
take
don't
into
wanna-
account, maybe grandfathering individuals that may have had long tenure. Since the policy was changed, which we'll talk about here again last year, there's some ramifications.
Yes.
If we,
Absolutely.
choose to change it, that we need to be mindful about to make sure we're, being right.
I would agree with that.
Okay, that's the discussion I wanted to have. Okay, good. All right.
Can I just make one statement?
Bernie?
1200 Bernie Cullen, 283 Weathersfield Street still. 1,200 hours is essentially half a man year. So the easiest way to kind of calculate this is you're basically putting as a liability half the salary of, and it's the last year's salary. So this is no small potatoes at all. I view it as, in the business I ran for 25 years, we never touched this. We never would agree to kind of a buyback program of this,
No.
this magnitude.
And,
Use of sick time is really a supervisory issue. And that's the way it should be treated. And as it stands, it's a financial issue. It's a huge liability. And
that's why the inspectors general
yeah, I
come out
agree,
and,
absolutely. I
and,
don't often agree with the state, but on this one, absolutely 100% agree.
well, we're gonna take it under advisement and we will look at it, okay, thoroughly. Okay. Moving on to item number 7, discuss upcoming Mass DEP stakeholder meeting regarding clean energy standards, CES, in Boston on 3/19.
Brian, you
Mr.
can-
Chair, yeah, I brought this up as an agenda item to discuss, so,
Yes.
The Mass DEP is holding, two stakeholder meetings, one of them being in Worcester, one of them being in Boston. The Boston one being closer and is on the next Tuesday. This is really about, discussions on how to expand the clean energy standard. And, there's gonna be some discussions about, how MLPs, fit into this system, and how the state is looking to make future policy. I think there's value in attending it. I don't know if you, Matt, have any opportunity maybe on Tuesday. I personally would like to go and listen and see, in person how these particular events take place.
Okay.
No, I think it's a fantastic thing that you want to take it by the reins. I know you have a strong interest in this stuff. I kind of like the fact that, you're looking into the CES side of things. I myself am more active, with House Bill H 2863. They changed the number on me, which is another MLP
Yep.
based bill to try and do greenhouse gas emissions or reductions using different PPAs that, exist at the time. So there's two different approaches to this, the CES RPS approach, and then there's a proposed MLP type statute out there. So Brian can be the yin looking at one, and I can be the yang taking a look at the other one. And
Okay. Well, I make a motion to send Brian to the Clean Energy Standards meeting, okay, next Tuesday, and to come back and report to us next, as an agenda item
Yeah.
next month, okay? That sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. You're it,
You wanna
Brian.
go too?
Yeah, I'll check my schedule. I'll
Okay.
reach out to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take notes.
That would be good.
Take notes.
Excellent. Just to go back on that a little bit, this, we were discussing a while back about Energy Star, and that was about the other private electric companies, and they were as incentives to the community, correct?
Yeah.
A lot of them Okay. See, I think that's what we need to see if we can bring that back into our community, because I think there's a lot of people would be very interested after they hear the incentives are.
Yeah, I think this could be, I agree with you. I think maybe in a future agenda item where we can look to explore how we can get, community outreach and all that, and, the programs we have and how we can, help to promote it.
I saw something in the mail when it came to energy. It was something on a credit union, and it was something about almost. Well, before I bring it up, I'm going to talk to you about it, okay? Well, I can't talk to you, I'll talk to you about it, okay? And then you can talk to him about it, because I can't talk to him.
Yeah, my
okay?
empathy.
Okay, all right, moving on, number 8, resource material link.
That was included in the last one.
That was what?
That was part of the last one.
That was part of the last one, okay, moving on.
10.
We're jumping to 10.
Jumping to, well, okay, because that 9 is also, I have to go down through the agenda here.
go.
Okay, that's the MassGov, Clean Energy Standards, 310 CMR 775. You all got that, okay. Moving on, number 10, discuss participation Earth Day event on Dodge Reservation, hosted by Raleigh Open Space Committee on 4/20.
Hi. Do you want to?
Yeah, so I've requested to have this agenda item as well. The Open Space Committee in town, along with the YMCA, is having an event at Dodge Reservation for the Earth Day. Jenna Haig, you're on the Open Space Committee.
I am.
Jen, could you identify yourself, please?
Sure, Jenna Haig, 179 Hillside Street. Yes, I am, and let me just hand these to you. Those are our flyers, so it'll give you a
Okay.
better idea of the day. It's a Saturday, the 20th, rain or shine.
Okay,
We're participating and partnering with the YMCA to do some trail cleanup and some activities.
excellent.
And we're going to have tables set up, and one of the tables we wanted to have was, Brian has a company that's going to be doing a clean energy demo information. They're just informational tables with giveaways in some areas and not, and just to educate our community on different things. Everything from reduce, reuse, recycle. We've got a table for that. We've got clean energy. We've got how to protect yourselves from mosquitoes and ticks. I mean, it's just running the gamut.
Okay.
And it's an entire Earth Day. And so we'd love, if anyone, wanted to participate. I believe Brian said maybe the Raleigh Municipal Lighting, with all the information that you all have, you could have that table with them.
And that's kind of my thought was, if the RMLP would want to share some of the information they have for the rebates, like we just mentioned, or any of the energy efficiency programs. I don't know if you volunteer on Saturdays, but you're new to the department.
I just got here. It's a good way to get my face out there. I've already started my,
yes.
go around the town and introducing myself. For any man in the room, I will check with the boss when I get home. I've learned that much over the years. Find out exactly what the kids have for events, but I can make that happen.
Yeah,
Bring the
I think it's a
kids.
good opportunity,
It's gonna be wonderful.
for
There's all kinds of stuff.
getting RMLP out there to talk to the community, people who
Yeah,
are
no,
going to attend these
absolutely.
types of events. It's good outreach.
So you're talking about like setting up, putting the table up obviously, and then handing out information on the rebate programs that we offer, the EV program, so on and so
EV
forth.
program, yep. We've got the community solar coming online, so just information about the things that the department has to offer for the community. So
Tables will be set up and provided. You just come with your information, and for about an hour or two, we just hang out and get to know the community as they come and educate them as best we can.
Yeah.
While there's music playing, we're gonna have a band, and it's gonna be fun.
I would say let's bring this up again for next month's meeting, and try to emphasize people, especially to go out to the Y camp out there and take a look around. And this is a wonderful resource for everyone in the town, and especially I always tell young parents, you need to take a look at this, because what the Y offers, especially for young parents. And Chris Bavalakar the director of the Y is a great
Yeah.
person. I see him all the time, and it's I can't say enough about the Y and their cooperation with the town and other events they do besides this.
Wonderful. We'd love to have your support, and I know Brian will be there, so I just wanted to bring that along, Mr. Chairman.
Jenna, you do a lot of into recycling and,
I do.
okay. I just came back from Aruba, okay, and they have the no straw policy,
Oh,
and they also have gone one step forward. There's no plastic allowed on boxes, so it's all cardboard boxes for meals and everything.
wonderful.
A whole, but there's some parts of the island, they have 18 months to fall into, like the airport. But for the most part, I was amazed. I mean, you get your little drink with a little umbrella.
I know.
You know, non-alcoholic, of course, and it had no straw. So everybody is like, oh, what do I do?
You're in Aruba, don't drink.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they were non-alcoholic.
Yeah, they have metal straws now, though, but, so members of the board, chairman, is there anything else that you'd like to know about it before I leave? I've got a little bit of a cold, so I've got to get out of here.
It's all good. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Jenna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
All right, you too.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know that flyer is going out in this month's bills.
Excellent. Good. Thank you. Okay. All right, we took care of that, and we have 2 items left, correct?
Do we need to just do anything to get on next agenda meeting, or you said you wanted to bring it up?
Could we bring this up again
We'll just make
next,
an
because
agenda
the next agenda meeting is the 10th,
Yeah.
okay? And that will be my last meeting chairing, okay? Because the meeting after that is the day after the election, so that okay, so. And there will be a new member at that particular time, coming into the board. Wasn't there one item that I checked everything, and I
Well,
think there
Matt's
was.
gonna end up needing to
I'm
get
gonna have to run out and
the
grab
pilot.
Oh,
at
yes.
some point.
Yes.
Can you grab that
You want me to
right
go
now?
now?
Yeah, could you do that right
You
now?
betcha.
And we'll just hold on, and we have the last item, number 11. We'll just wait a second. Because I really want to vote on the article about the town payment.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask a question?
Bernie, you're perfect. We can segue into any question you want right now. Almost.
I'm just interested, the Public Utility Commission report, the existing one, I think, is kind of dated at this point, 2016, if I remember correctly. Is there a new one? That's the one that's on the website. Is there a
Our
updated?
The DPU report? Is that what
DPU
you're referring
report's
to?
being worked on currently right now
As I
And
said, there
that's
should be
for
the
which year?
2018 release.
for 2018.
So was there a 2017?
Yes, there was.
So is that on the website?
Like you just said, I think 2016 was the last one posted.
Okay. All right.
But for your information, it is available on the DPU website, DOER.
Oh, okay.
Or we could get you a copy if you'd like.
No, I can
Okay.
say that through.
There is a report. Yes.
Okay. I wasn't dreaming though.
No.
We're missing one, for those people watching at home, we're missing one piece of paper that has the amount for the pilot payment program for a town meeting. And at this particular time, I wish, because it's budget season, that we vote in that particular number.
So the pilot was $29,042.30.
$29,042.30.
And 30 cents.
Okay. This, the light board, planning board, is that in the library?
Library.
Over the library.
Next door.
So
Library.
just-
Yeah, we'll take it.
You can go out
We'll
this,
take it.
Okay, so.
We'll show it.
all right, Bonnie,
Take
thank
care,
you.
thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
Thank you.
Did you want to visually?
Okay, so, you go back and make a motion. I'm gonna make the motion.
Yep.
Okay.
I make a motion to
This is-
Pay the town of Rowley the sum of $29,042.30 as a payment in lieu of taxes for the calendar year 2019. Is that which one is going in this?
It's fiscal year 2020.
Fiscal year 20, fiscal year 2020, sorry. Fiscal year 2020.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion to submit the pilot payment.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes. Okay, so we're good for,
I won't say.
thank you.
Digital.
Okay, the last item is, this is the Dan Folding sick time buyback. Okay? And this, we have a lot of paper on this, okay? And there's a lot to this. And where is my paper that I had? Okay. Should I start probably with your letter?
Well, I guess, I do the payroll for the town. And when I got the last payroll, one of the things is when we have something like anything like longevity, anything that's not normally recurring, both the town accountant and I, review policies just to make sure that everything is as it should be. And I have a copy of the RMLP policy manual from, I believe it was
2008, I think it was. That was the one you had that, correct?
Right. And when I reviewed that, what I was seeing in the payroll was not consistent with what I saw in the policies. So I brought that up to, I think I spoke with you, Kevin,
Yep.
and then on a separate occasion I spoke with Brian. And there were some inconsistencies, and it became apparent to me that this was something that the board needed to review and interpret the policies. And that was what prompted me to, write the memo, and also they mentioned treasurers and that Inspector General report, keeping an eye on things. So basically, I just outlined kind of that, there were some inconsistencies, and I thought it would be a good idea for the board to clarify the policies and their interpretation of the policies before we made this payout.
Do you want to add anything, Matt, to?
Not too much. I mean, this obviously all took place before I
Yes.
before I arrived.
Okay.
I did look in the policy manual, and it was the 2008 version. And I just, kind of asked around and got a little bit of information without saying too much. And it was my understanding that there was a policy change sometime within the last 2 years.
It was in February of 2018.
Yes.
And-
February of 18.
And in writing my memo, I did go back and watch the 2 meetings where it was discussed and voted on.
Yeah, so there's obviously a little bit more knowledge in the room as far as this specific policy than I can bring to the table.
The amount that the former light plant manager was looking at was a total of $12,772.10.
That's what was submitted on the payroll.
Okay, and at that particular time, when we saw this, we went back and looked at the policies of 2008, and also the change that happened in 2018 at that
Right.
February meeting. I have minutes from that. And I also went back and watched those 2 meetings, okay? And then also, we got a from K&P Law about this payout, okay? And K&P Law, I read this, you gentlemen read this?
I did read it. Yep.
Okay. It's in lawyerese, I should say, and
KP Law is
K&P Law is the
representing.
representative for the light,
Raleigh Lake.
the Raleigh Light, and most light have K&P Law, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
Actually, no. They're
No?
kind of the outlier at this point.
Okay, I thought,
But immaterial.
Maybe years ago.
maybe years ago, okay. So, anyways, they gave us this, how they saw it, and as I read it, and I want the commissioners to see if they saw it the same way, it really cut both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was, it's back in the commissioner's lap about,
That's what I got out of it.
okay. And is that what you got out of it, Brian?
Yeah, in general,
Okay.
yeah.
Kevin?
I want to make this clear, when we signed that payroll with Dan Folding's payout, the previous general manager's payout on it, I had previously asked him for a copy of the policy, the buyback policy. And this was actually unrelated to what was coming up with that buyback. It was more along the lines of the Inspector General's
Yes.
report had just come out. Can you let me know what our MLP's policy is for sick time buyback? So he forwarded me that policy, and based on that policy I'd received, it appears that that payout was correct. That's why I went ahead and signed it. At that time, Karen then contacted me and said that there may be an issue with it. We may want to take a look at the older policies. I've looked at the videos of, the January 10th meeting, the February 14th meeting, probably as many times as the Secret Service looked at this Zapruder film to try and figure things out. And to me, it's just not clear in there which bucket they intended to have this sick time buyback come from. To my understanding, we had two buckets at that time. We had a set that was eligible for buyback.
Yes.
And you were only able to put into that eligible for buyback bucket if you used 4 days or less of sick time per year. If you used more, you were ineligible until January 1st of the next year, at which time you were, again, you went through the whole process, more or less you can put in, so on and so forth. My takeaway is, it was never defined as to which bucket it was going to be. If I was an employee and I had been here working and doing my due diligence and coming in and trying to earn my way towards those hours by being 4 hours or less, and all of a sudden a windfall was dropped on another employee because of a non-well-defined policy, I would have a serious problem with it because I've done my part. In reading the K&P law review here, like you said, it does cut both ways. And in fact, it says in here that, it's up to the commissioners to decide what this policy is going to be. Again, my concern is it wasn't well-defined, but I would err on the side of the ratepayer and say that from that point forward, any sick time that accrued would be added to the buyback as it was as of that day. So from February 14th on, whatever you had on buyback, you could accrue the full sick time thereafter. You wouldn't have that 4-day target. And I know it's hard to explain without having a drawing and a chart and everything out in front of you. And the more I go into these policies, the more crazy it drives me because it's not well defined. And this leads to something.
I being the person who made the motion that particular night, okay, with the other two commissioners, I was not the chairman of the board, okay? I was just a commissioner. Kenny was the clerk at the particular time. I made the motion, and as I remember, and as I went back and looked at the tapes, it was from that particular time forward that it would be the change in the policy, okay, which was February 2018.
February 14th, yes.
Okay, from that, yeah, it was Valentine's Day. And from that particular time forward, that the policy would change. Now, I talked to Madam Treasurer, and looking at what the former manager put down, and could you explain a little bit, we talked about the,
With regard to.
with regards to the hours.
Well, basically, it's like Kevin said, that you have the old policy that was in effect that said, okay, if you use 4 days or less of sick time, then you earn the right to buyback.
Right.
If you use more, you earn 0.
Right.
So in going through the numbers, there was a year, I believe the first year,
Yep.
there was a buyback entitlement because it was a partial year. And then from the sequential years going forward, prior to 2018, there was no buyback earned because there was more than 4 days
Correct.
used. So, I mean, that was my interpretation and that was what, caused me to bring this up.
And in the motion, there was no retroactive in the motion. It was just then and there, moving forward.
The problem for me is there was no designation whatsoever. It just says, from now on, all sick days
Yes.
will be bought back. And
So,
to me, that represents a windfall to some people. Because until such time, they weren't eligible for it. They hadn't, again, done their due diligence. So does this create 2 pools of sick time still? Yes. Not sick time, eligible to buy back sick time, yes.
but the eligibility for the hours coming forward, that looking at Dan's eligibility through the years, okay, of the hours accrued. Now, that seems to be a problem, correct?
Correct, I mean, that's the issue.
That's the issue.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think just to comment as I'm listening, so that's kind of where I see some of the main discrepancy is if you were to look at the old policy, it basically, it defines that it restarts each year. So, at the time, the hours would have been, certified and vested in that year, and that's that year's closed out. So to get a sheet that had a balance of, eligible numbers, as of this year, for years in which they would not have qualified for, is, questionable. It doesn't line up with how the previous policy would have stamped those dates in time and hours, historically, and then going forward, you're expecting it to have started from the time of the policy change in February 2018 forward.
Right, and I think if you're saying that you're keeping 2 sets of sick time books, I don't think that's entirely correct. Because you have your sick time, and then this is a separate benefit.
Right.
So I don't think it's, you're keeping 2 sets. I think you have a buyback policy, and then you have your sick time policy. And your buyback policy, for the years, I think 2007 or 2008 through 2018 was defined.
Correct. Right, because it was defined with the target, so on and so forth, so we had numbers to populate both columns.
Right.
Right.
So, when it comes down to nitty-gritty, this payout of $12,772.10 does not equate when the numbers are run for.
That's for you guys to decide.
Right.
That's for you to interpret the policy.
Okay. Now, I looked at it and I didn't agree with that, the $12,772.10 because of the way the hours were accrued.
Oh, I totally understand that, At first, when I spoke to Karen that day, it was kind of hard to wrap myself around this policy, and then you sit down, like I said, and you write it out, and you look at how things were, and then you look at the minutes, and you look at the meetings and try and glean some idea of what was meant there, and it wasn't well spelt out, and that goes back to what I've said earlier tonight about adopting policies that aren't very well spelled out.
Yeah.
It should have said, in this policy, from February 14th forward, sick time accrued, any sick time accrued will be added to the eligible buyback hours as of that date.
And just let me,
Karen, does that make sense to you?
Right.
And
Yeah.
again, it's hard without writing it out. Bernie, I wish I could draw this all out for you, because it's a hard picture
I'm
for
just
me
concerned
to.
about
Right.
what's the difference between the $12,772.10, which is the former manager's calculation, and a reasonable calculation given this
Well,
this revised
it's
interpretation.
not, I shouldn't say, it's not reasonable, okay? It's what the numbers say, okay? That's what it comes down to.
Good
Not,
point.
it's not, this is not how I feel. It's what, between the policy and what the numbers say. That's the bottom line here. And also that particular night, that there was other items on the table besides this particular item. Okay, there was something, it was item number 3 that I couldn't go along with because it was, felt it was excessive. Should we have looked at this? But now we come back. Brian, your feeling?
I think if you were to read this particular letter that was submitted from the KP Law, and let me preface this by saying I'm in the same boat as Kevin, in which, you know, I got these numbers, I looked at them and said, well, according to the current policy, that's how I would interpret it. And then seeing, you know, the numbers behind it and then understanding the previous years, I can agree with the discrepancy. When you look at this letter that was provided, you know, I think the hang up is on what was shown as the next policy in the handbook, which doesn't define which bucket that this buyback would come from. It essentially just says also time, and I think that draws a discrepancy in interpretation. But I think you have to go with how you would have read the policy before it was changed, and use those recorded numbers as they should have been historically recorded, and that would have been your running total year to year.
So again, the policy changed February 14th, 2018.
Correct.
Coming forward.
Yes.
Okay. Now, we're under the other policy because, again, the motion was made, was no retroactive or anything else before that. Okay. So I think we've explained all that portion of it. And so looking at the numbers that were provided for that particular time, what is would be the payout be?
Well, you have the,
So
and
based-
Eric would actually have the numbers. He and I prepared 2018
There's so
yesterday.
many papers here today.
I know. This is.
Yeah, I think there was an update, if I understood when I was talking with you, to 2018 numbers versus what was.
Yes,
what was
Eric and I
once provided.
reconciled those yesterday.
Okay.
Do we have that number?
I do not.
I believe it was 144 hours minus, was it 92? 92 and a half, something, you know, in that neighborhood.
So the
So what you need to do is you need to interpret the policy, and then basically by interpreting the policy, Eric can
Correct.
come up with the payout numbers.
okay. Okay. So
I just started trying to write out a motion and clearly define what we're trying to get at.
I would greatly appreciate that.
Yeah.
My brain is on like shutdown.
Okay.
Believe me, but I'm working on it here.
So while Kevin is doing that, could I just make a comment about kind of personnel policies in general? You don't have a personnel department. Do you serve as the personnel officer?
Pretty much, yes.
Right, right. And part of what the Attorney General the Inspector General's report suggested was to make policies more in line with those of the state and the town. And, considering, we're a small town, an option you might want to look at in the future is the town has a personnel plan. And, you may want to consider moving under that. Because then you won't have, policy manuals floating around that aren't updated. And you'll have, the policies of the town, when they're updated, they're very clear. You wouldn't have ambiguity. And, it's just something that you may want to consider.
I think.
Yeah, I think I'm totally comfortable moving forward. I appreciate your suggestion. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I did just get here, and I
Yep.
feel pretty comfortable moving forward. Having been around the block a couple times, worked at different places, know what other light departments do. A lot of them do model a lot of their stuff after their towns. Feel pretty confident that we can have policies and procedures that are black and white and won't run into this, confusion in the future.
That's what we have right here. Because of it, it would be very nice, I think, for it to come under the same umbrella. The light department and the town. Anyways.
I'm just taking a quick break from this.
Okay.
One of the things I was actually going to suggest tonight, and is one of the things that I'm actually doing at my own department, is to have the entire personnel policy reviewed for things that either, conflict. Because I think if you look at the old sick time policy, there's conflicting numbers of buyback days, so on and so forth, to see if anything that was written in there is illegal.
It's always a good idea to have them under review, like every 5 years anyway,
Yep.
just with the change in everything, with electronics and storage of data and disposing of old materials. Everything changes so fast nowadays that it's definitely common practice to have these looked at every so many years.
The policy of the light department, if I remember correctly, was 2012, the last time.
The policy manual, yes.
The policy manual, 2012.
Which I believe, which I guess it surprises me, because that was outsourced and it was a very expensive procedure.
Yes.
And, that the policy manual came back with this ambiguity in these policies, I find that kind of surprising.
But there
Lawyers do that so they can be
Right.
hired again to interpret
I
their
mean, the
own
ratepayers
writings.
paid a lot of money for that policy manual.
Yeah. So I
And I know that predates you, but.
Certainly. I know that in Reading, for instance, every year we would sign, Eric and I talked about this when this discussion first came up. At the end of every year, before the end of January, the accounting department would provide you a sick time balance report. And there was 2 copies, and it was left with everybody's desk in an envelope, and you were to read, review, and sign. And it went in your personnel file. You read your balance, and you agreed to it, and it went in your file. So there
Right.
was no confusion at your exit as to what you were not entitled to according to the rules that you signed up to follow. So just things like that.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely. And at some
very
point in
familiar
time.
with the,
Oh,
with, no problem at all. With following good business practices,
Right.
good procedures, so that there's clarity and
the personnel
definition and everything that we do.
policy that was written for the light department as of 2012, it was around that plus or minus a year, okay, at that particular time. And prior to that, there was,
We didn't have anything
there
in
was
writing.
nothing.
No.
And
We
that
had
was,
policies as they came along
yes,
and understood, maybe written down, but there was nothing in a 3-ring binder
yes,
given to the employee, signed,
Right.
and that was,
that's correct.
I think, just to correct, I think the effective date would have been 2008. Is when this initial policy book was put together. At least
I-
the documentation say
At least
effective.
Well,
Policy.
Yeah.
The booklet was put together in 2011, about that time, and then anything that
Okay.
you have here, 2008, was sort of
Existing.
existing.
Okay. Thank you.
I
Some of those complicated.
I think 2008 may have been sick time policy? Is that-
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I don't, there was nothing in a binder, okay?
So it's
At
kind of
that particular
assembled.
time. And that, after 2011, the binder was put together.
If I may ask, from the town's perspective, how often is the personnel manual reviewed and updated, do you know, Treasurer?
You would have to check with Deb Egan. She's the town's personnel officer.
Okay.
So I think come back and review this, the whole policy and about the umbrella and everything else, and I think that's for the commission to do. And seeing that we only have one more meeting, I don't think I should be, because at this particular time.
Agreed.
No, seriously, because I won't have, there'll be no continuity.
Yeah.
You would need continuity, so I think we'll probably brought up the meeting after next. That way, you have a full board to go forward from that point.
Fresh start, fresh task.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say my experience with the personnel function within the town has been surprisingly good. And that the caliber of the work is first rate, and it certainly takes a burden off the water department. So I would recommend a serious look at that.
All right, I'm gonna read it to you guys, and
All right.
you guys tell me what you think, if there's additions or subtractions or
Sure.
anything else, or anything I need to define. So, my motion, we're not voting on this one right now, but this is just what I'm writing. My motion is to define the to make a motion to define the sick, oh my God. I need water. Make
Take
a
your time.
motion to define the sick time eligible to buy back to include any hours defined as eligible for buyback prior to 2/14/2018, plus any unused sick time accrued after 2/14/2018 as defined in policies 512 and 513 of the RMLP policy handbook. So that would include anything that was eligible up to 2/4/2018, which is the date it was voted. And then subject to the new policy you made that night. So it removes that 4-day target. So anything after that point is eligible.
The
To the target removal date, it removes the target on that date.
Okay, so the target, the 4-day target is prior to 2018, correct?
That was, yes.
2/14/18.
2/14/18.
Well, since it's an annual target, it would be probably retroactive to January 1st.
1/1/18.
The whole year of 2018.
I get it, but again, we run into that fact that we didn't define retroactive anywhere in it.
Yeah, there's
So-
not,
But where it's an annual policy, isn't that what it's called, is the annual sick leave buyback?
I'm looking for the word annual.
Well, I guess, so what my question would be, in saying that would be, if you had taken 4 sick days prior to February 14th, would that make you ineligible for 2018?
yeah, I see your point, so it would have to
Calendar
be
year
the
is-
calendar
is a
year,
much
2018.
better
So,
way
I mean,
to-
that's for them to interpret, I guess.
What,
Agreed, but I'm also agreeing with, just thinking out loud.
Um,
Calendar year
I-
makes
Well, I
sense.
said, it's annual, and then they didn't like that, so I guess that would be
No,
why you
I'm-
would have to interpret it.
No, because that was, nothing was in the motion of annual, okay? So the motion was made February 14th, 2018, coming forward.
Right, but what does the prior policy that was in effect until February 14th?
That was the one that we talked about with, if you had more than 4 hours,
4 days.
4 days, I'm sorry, 4 days, then you weren't eligible for
Buyback.
buyback. Okay?
I mean, and I have no idea whether or not that would make a difference in the calculation.
Whether it was from February or to January.
Correct,
of 18.
right. I mean, I have no idea whether or not that would make any difference, but, you know, that's something that you would have to clarify as well.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure, Bernie.
Does it make any sense to simply clarify the prior motion to make the point that it's not retroactive? And then that simplifies everything, because now you've got two separate.
Well, the motion that was made that particular night, it was,
Not assume that it was retroactive, I agree,
It
but
was
now
in-
you're clarifying it.
no, there was nothing in the wording to say retroactive,
Right.
right?
But now you're clarifying that it is not retroactive. So you're making because the confusion is, at least Mr. Dan actually interpreted it as retroactive. So that argues for making a simple clarification that it is not, the current policy is not retroactive, does not apply retroactively before the date that you change the policy, and just simplify it. Having dropped that hand grenade, I have to run across the street.
Okay, Bernie.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks for the hand grenade.
Good luck, guys.
Have a good night.
I don't know that he to Bernie's point, I don't know that he interpreted it as retroactive more so than all-inclusive. It jumped from the eligible pot to now all of a sudden everything is eligible.
Right.
It went from one to the other. I don't see the retroactive portion of it that Bernie's going to be talking about.
Well, under the old policy, okay, I think most of what is requesting this the buyback policy comes under the old policy.
Correct, and I don't know specifically
And I'm
what,
not-
what that policy says, I don't have it in front of me, but,
Right.
you know, if you're saying that the policy changed on February 14, 2018, which, by the way, is incorrect in the KP memo. I believe the KP memo
Yep,
says the
January
meeting
10th.
where they discussed it.
That was when it was discussed, but not voted on.
Correct, but
Right.
that's erroneous in the KP memo.
Yeah.
But also, you know, the board needs to come to a decision that when Eric goes back and looks at the exact number of sick days that were taken in 2018 prior to February 18th, what does the previous policy, how does the previous policy, you know, does it look at a whole year? I mean, you need to make sure that the new policy doesn't supersede the old policy for the year 2018, I guess is my point. You need to define and say, you know, either we interpret it as being
Well-
all of 2018, or we interpret it that if you use more than 4 days prior to the date the policy was adopted, you are ineligible for that year.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
And that's the problem with having two policies within that calendar year, is making that definition right there.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
that's something that you guys need to do, and I think, you know, you really need to do this tonight, because you have
Yeah,
an employee that has a liability and
That- yeah.
paydays,
Yep. No, I
you
agree.
know, next week.
Yeah.
Essentially, both policies really basically just say the calculation for the target is done for the applicable year. It's not stating, you know, what you would do with, you know, a month and 10 days, you know, or whatever it was of day,
I think the
usage.
easiest thing to do in this case is probably make it retroactive to January 1st.
inclusive of the year.
Well, I don't use the word retroactive, use the word fiscal year.
Well, you work on a calendar year.
The calendar year.
Yeah.
I mean,
Calendar
would
year.
you like me to
think-
go see? I have this in my office, I could go pull the paperwork and see if it's a moot point. Because if there weren't 4 days used prior to,
Yeah, could you do that?
yeah,
Well, I
That's-
think
I think
no,
that's
Karen, hold
important.
on one second. I may even have it right here.
Would that, well, but I think it needs to be defined, because if there was another employee that this would
Kevin, I think the one you have is years.
calculation.
Is what?
Doesn't affect another employee,
Carries.
doesn't affect another employee too.
Right.
I have the detailed dates.
But I think
Oh,
we
I
have to
forgot
go,
your office is right here. I'm thinking we're down the street.
I think the calendar year. I think that needs to be,
I think I would agree with the
Okay.
calendar year, because the new policy defines the calendar year. The old policy did say the calendar year will run from January 1st to December 31st. I think that somewhat simplifies it, perhaps, if you want to call it simplifying.
And again, this all goes back to my point of having clearly defined policies when we do
yeah,
things.
yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems easy to add something in and you miss the fine details.
Yeah, I mean, this predates, Matt, you, Anna,
So in this case, there were not 4 days used before there, so it would be a moot point to
No,
discuss.
okay. Yeah, so, okay. Here we go, for 2.5 days.
Hours.
Right, out,
hours.
okay. Okay, so,
And that actually should have does that have a total on it as well?
92.5.
Okay, so that's the total for the year.
those are hours,
Hours used.
hours used.
So, under the new policy, the entitlement would be 144 hours, minus that would be the eligible amount.
For 2018.
Yeah.
Okay. Prior to 2018, it would come under the old.
That's for
Policy.
you guys to decide.
So my motion would be to make a motion to define the sick time. Oh my God, this is absolutely killing me tonight. To define the sick time eligible to buy back to include sick time accrued for buyback prior to 1/1/2018.
Yes.
And including any unused sick time.
I would say 2018 calendar year. Would that make more sense? Instead of going back to 1/1/2018, calendar year 2018. I'm just trying to simplify it.
I mean, to simplify, you want to say that the policy that was in effect until the change was in effect prior to the change?
Yeah,
I mean, is that what you're trying to say? That the previous policy was in effect,
until,
the change in
Until it was
policy?
changed in February 14th of 2018.
Effective to the entire calendar year of 2018.
yeah, it has to be carefully worded.
So Eric, are you saying there was no buyback policy prior to 2008, no formal, or there was?
There was, when Carl Benson was the manager, we had a written policy.
And do you have that? Because we have employees that have been with us longer than Dan was, that we'll have to go through the old policy with regard to, you know, calculating their buyback.
The policy that was in the policy book was a carbon copy of what Carl had prior.
He brought his sick time policy buyback from Reading Light Department,
Right.
which is where I came from, which that's why I'm familiar with the
Correct.
policy.
But we have an employee that recently retired,
Sure.
or is soon to be retired,
Technically on vacation still,
who,
yes.
who was with the department for many, many, many years.
Yep.
So I guess, you know, we want to make sure that we're interpreting his buyback
Yes.
from whatever the policy was when he earned those hours.
Okay, we will have to look in the department.
So I guess, you know, just as a
Yeah,
heads up.
yeah.
He would, that particular person comes under the buyback prior to January 1st, 2018.
Correct, and we know what the policy was in 2008 because that's the date on the policy in the book.
Is that correct, Matt? Is that how you would,
Yes,
okay.
But his
Yes.
employment predates 2008.
but he's been here a lot longer, long time previous 2008 as well.
With the-
But he'll
with-
fall into that.
Right,
Yes, there'll need to be some extensive research
correct.
by Eric,
Oh, good.
for sure, through personnel
Right.
records, which I'm totally confident he has.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to come up with the proper number, so that we're not, you know, doing this.
Correct,
Once we
yeah.
get a, you know, a vote,
And a policy,
and
yeah.
a motion of what the accepted policy is in a time frame, we can certainly calculate that out, and it will be correct the first time.
So now I have make a motion to define sick time eligible to be bought back to include sick time eligible prior to 1/1/2018, that calendar year, plus all sick time accrued as defined by RMLP policies 512 and 513. So we're starting at fresh 1/1/2018 and we're applying 512 and 513 back to them, to that time.
But do you need to say anything before that shall be governed by the previous policy?
Yes, that needs to be defined. Because there's nothing in the motion going back to,
I'm getting there.
okay.
And I guess,
Believe me, this has been a rough couple of
And
days.
the motion is to accept the revised sick time policy. There's nothing else in the motion.
well, you're defining
Yep,
that one policy applies going forward and one
right.
previous policies applied to the time when those policies were the policies. But did the policy numbers change, I guess? Because Kevin, you referenced certain
Yeah,
policy
one did.
numbers.
I think it went from 511 and 512 to 512 and 513. I'm doing the big paper shuffle here, right?
Right, because I think you want to reference the dates.
Okay.
Because
Policy number
sometimes,
effective until.
yeah, because I know one of the policies was policy, 123 as amended in 2009 or something like that. So sometimes the policies change, but the numbers don't change.
And then,
If you guys want to take a crack at this too.
but just
simplify
reading,
it,
just
knock
reading going
yourselves out.
back, it said at that particular time, I'm reading from the February 14th meeting, okay? It was sick leave policy. This is from your notes, Eric, okay? It's currently read as, to get buyback, an employee can't go over 4 days of being sick. The new wording would read, the employee would be blank, I'm sorry, the employee would bank the remaining balance of the year, no matter how much time they use within the year. This will bring the employee quicker to the 200-hour buyback goal if they retire from Raleigh Municipal Light. Okay, and that was it. And then we went into talking about the stipend, and that was when the stipend was brought up. That's when I made comments on where the policy would be going, and possibly for retirements coming in the future, and said I didn't back this idea of the stipend. Okay. I gotta read. Yeah, I was concerned about the retirements coming in the future and the excessive money that would be paid out, and that's the reason they didn't go along with the stipend. And I said, didn't want to go on from that point, okay. And then at that point after that, then the motion was made. And then there was no clarification with defining that motion. So there was nothing about retroactive or anything else. It was from that point on, the way I would read it. Because there's nothing else in the motion to define what it was. That make sense?
Yeah, but understandable. It was a year ago. It's
Yeah, I'm
gonna take
Well,
everybody
but
a
when
minute
you
to-
watch those videos, it's like it was yesterday.
Recordings. Eric, let me ask you, so on the calendar years, what do you call the hours that basically you call them certified or just eligible buyback hours?
You start with 12 hours per month. 12 is 144 hours.
And then whatever would have been,
And then as
over
you
the
go
4 that would have been eligible buyback hours, do you call that as being, those are certified hours, so they're vested hours, like, is there any specific, label that you have to them other than just eligible buyback?
What I do is I just have a spreadsheet at the end of the year, and I give to each employee if you're eligible or not for that buyback.
Okay, so at the end of the year, there would have been, here's your, this is
Exactly.
what you had, it's
Yep.
filed, it's, it's got a date stamped on it, and
Yep.
everything, okay. All right.
Matt, can I just ask you, I know your auditors are coming in.
Yes.
Will you make sure they get a copy of the revised policy? Because that is gonna change your liability. I don't know, I know right now there's a reserve for employee something on your balance sheet. And I think it's got about $110,000. That includes.
Yes.
But like I said, I think this will increase that liability.
Yeah, it's definitely going to affect it. Get it all figured out. Absolutely.
And I don't know if there's been any other policy changes that might affect your financials in the last year.
No, believe it or not, I read that policy book cover to cover before I started working here. I don't remember all of it, word for word, but a lot of it is stuck, and a lot of it is very similar and in line with what other municipal light departments do.
As for financial, I think this was the only policy change.
Okay.
And
Well, I know the mutual aid policy changed too, but I don't know if that would have any bearing on your financial statements unless it happened that a mutual aid occurred at the end of the year and you didn't get paid at the end of until in the next calendar year.
Yep. Yeah, it's, if I understood that all right about the mutual aid, it sounds like that was just more or less, again, clarification and
Correct.
black and white on, that's something they get when they're working here. You know, if they were called in on a Sunday morning, or if they get stuck working on a holiday because of a windstorm or something like that. But it just was missed in their mutual aid language. Yeah, this would be a very interesting debate among some of the other towns too,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. You know, collective bargaining units and that type of stuff, and the history of it. It's, we have it relatively easy
Well,
compared to
right,
some
you
of these
don't
other
have a
towns.
CBU,
That's right,
so,
that's right. Well, and according to that report, as we referenced earlier, we're in, you know, the town rallies in better shape anyway, because it's already following a couple other recommendations that they came up with, so that's a good thing.
and I know, you track all of your, vacation, sick time, personal time internally. The rest of the for the rest of the town accountant also keeps track of that, but, she doesn't for you anymore. So I don't know if that's something that, you know, you may want to re-implement as a double check. Because I know when we went through and we were reconciling the hours for 2018, we did have a discrepancy.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I referenced earlier that, you know, end of the year balance, sign-off sheet, we can certainly look into implementing that into, you know, all time off, and I think we'll be all right keeping accurate records, and I think we'll be fine. Pretty confident we can handle that. Everybody should, you know, keep their own records as well, so if there is a discrepancy, they can.
Every week they get a copy of what they've used and what they've earned for sick time, vacation and personal, what they have left for the year.
Is that on their paycheck, or is it?
It's not at this
Okay.
point. And that's been, you know, the policy, the town policy.
What, not to be on a paycheck, or just?
Correct.
Okay.
I haven't got one yet, so I can't answer that.
Okay.
Okay, so this is, again, listen to the motion, correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm sure I am. I make a motion to define the sick time eligible to buyback to include eligible buyback hours as of 1/1/2018, plus all sick time accrued as defined by RMLP policies 512, revised 2/14/2018, and 513, effective date 10/2008. All eligible sick time prior to this date, 1/1/2018, was accrued under RML policies 511, effective 6/10/2008, 512, effective 6/10/2008, and 513, effective 6/10/2008. That covers all the policies in there that reference sick time.
Right.
Does that second half where you have the three policies
Mhm.
listed, that 513, did that cover the same thing in the previous
Yeah,
policy?
I believe so.
Because one of them was started. One of
Yeah,
them was sick leave.
513 back here was sick leave policy effective, again, 6/10/2008.
Okay.
So that existed back then, as did 511 and 512.
Okay.
So all three existed. It looks like two of them basically said the same thing, but the effective date on the policies that I have with me are there. So that's how they defined what was eligible for sick time buyback up to that point.
What were the titles on the 11, 12, and 13?
Let's see, 11 is benefits sick leave. And let's see, 13 is sick leave buyback.
This is the guidelines and targets, correct? Yep.
Yep. And
Okay.
then 12 was also benefits sick leave, and it shows effective date June 10, 2008.
Okay, this is from page 63?
I have, yep,
Yeah.
511 to 63,
Okay,
and then.
just reference on the pages also in the policy manual.
511, page 63, 512 would be. The one I'm using. 512 would be 67. What did I say 513 was? I apologize for all the paper
No,
shuffling.
no.
It's just not easy trying to get it to a. 513. I don't have a page on this one. Because that's the older. There's no page on that one,
No,
so we'll have to leave it as policy number 513.
that's 513?
Yep, as is that right there.
Oh, okay, yeah, 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 okay.
I have the policy number.
The
again, we
policy
just
number
don't have the page in
513.
the book.
We don't have a page, okay. And this policy number, well, from page 63 is policy number 511.
Yep, I have that, page
Okay.
63.
Okay, those two references, and then we can reference the other.
It's easier to go by the page numbers.
Well, we
I
want
have
to,
them so spread out all over here, and I have things written on the back.
well, we want to do this by the policy and by the numbers, and to do it correctly. I mean, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Anything else, Brian?
I don't think so. Want to give
Okay.
that another shot?
Go ahead, one more shot, another read.
I make a motion to define the sick time eligible to buy back to include eligible buyback hours as of January 1st, 2018, plus all sick time accrued as defined by RMLP policies 512, which was revised 2/14/2018, page 67, and policy 513, which we do not have a page for right now.
Yep,
Effective date 10/2008, so October of 2008. All eligible sick time prior to this date, 1/1/2018, was accrued under RMLP policies 511, which is page 63, effective date 6/10/2008. Policy 512, page 67, effective date 6/10/2008. And policy 513, effective date 6/10/2008.
okay. So we fall within the parameters of that time frame. Correct?
Correct.
Sound good?
I think that. I
Okay.
think that sums it.
Okay. Put that into a motion.
I just did.
Well, no, we reviewed the,
Okay.
what you said.
So I'll read
now-
it one more time. That makes sense to
Yeah, so this-
everybody as best as we.
Yes. So this is the motion.
Karen, even though it's kind of wordy, does that make sense to?
It's your policy,
No, I
yes.
understand
But it makes
that.
sense to me.
Okay, so I make a motion to define the sick time eligible to buy back to include eligible buyback hours as of January 1st, 2018, plus all sick time accrued as defined by RMLP policies 512, found on page 67, and revised 2/14/2018, and 513, effective date 10/2008. All eligible sick time prior to this date of 1/1/2018 was accrued under RMLP policies 511, found on page 63, effective date 6/10/2008. Policy 512, found on page 67, an effective date of 6/10/2008, and 513 with an effective date of 6/10/2008.
Okay. I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion to accept the definition or clarification of the sick time buyback.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I know that was a lot to put together, but it was important that we define it. Okay. There's nothing else on the agenda, unless there's anything else that need to be brought up for next meeting.
Not at this time.
I think we have a couple of items already that are going to be going on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you're going to talk about the policy, that will be in 2 meetings.
Yes.
Okay, and I think that's important, so you have continuity. Okay, going forward. All right, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll give you a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.